Welcome back to another episode of Boom and Bust on the Boom and Bust channel. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're going to talk about the 22 NFL draft, of course. I almost said you're home for 22 draft content, which I don't know if I can say that. Maybe one day, but this is the draft content that we do. And speaking of, today we're going to do a kind of quick, down and dirty, to the point guide to the 22 NFL draft, as seen by me, obviously. Please understand, and there's so many things to talk about in the draft, but please understand a couple things. Number one, don't listen to anybody that tells you they know what's going to happen. Even people that have inside scoops might get a hint on one or two teams, but there's 32 teams. We never know what they're going to do, and they work hard to make sure it's kept secret. And so there's that, especially in a draft like this. So I don't want you to ever listen to another podcast, read a mock draft, read an article, any of that, and feel like, man, okay, this is what's happening. Trust me, the vast majority of the time is not even correct. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to focus mostly on the prospects, which is probably what you expected. But I just want to say that because, again, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about the draft in general and philosophy and all these different things. And, you know, I might touch a little bit on that. But this is mainly just about the prospects to give you kind of a quick little guide. So anyway, the draft overall. So let's talk about that. The way I look at the draft is between top talent and depth. That's the way I grade positions. That's kind of the way I grade the draft overall, and that makes sense to me. And so when you're talking about the draft, and it's hard to explain, but the best way I could say this, if you understand it, is that there's two different types of games. You have the actual draft, and then you have the building of a team. And the building of a team is probably the more familiar thing that you can understand. You can understand a roster and talent and all that and contracts and who's good, who you can give up, who you can't. You know that part. The draft part is a little more complicated. And honestly, it's a lot more superficial. So we talk about draft stock, and like you think of it as stock market, you think of the economy because it is pretty much supply and demand. Obviously, there's not 40 elite quarterbacks in any draft. So quarterbacks are important not only to the actual game in the roster, but in the draft, it's important because they're scarce. So the draft game is a whole different conversation. And again, it's a lot of speculation because the people with the most information are not talking about it, which are the teams. And so understand that too when we're talking about the draft. And so top talent for me, again, whatever you want to call it, is, you know, what are the blue chip prospects, and that's where you have to understand that you could have somebody's going to be number one pick no matter what. I mean, if you put in a draft of, and this is hyperbole, but if you put in a draft of high school players, or let's just say high school caliber players, and that's all there was, somebody's going to be number one. And so you can't equate number ones across the years and all that stuff. People love to do that. You're a top 3 pick. And all that really says is you were the most in demand for that year. And not even the most in demand, just for that team. Because I say this all the time. You can become, it only takes one team to make you a top 10 pick, top 15, whatever. 31 teams could not want you, but if you get picked there, that's where you are. So people have to realize that your talent isn't always equated to where you go, especially in the draft these days where a lot of it is potential. So top talent, if you could look at a draft, again, somebody's going to get drafted. And this draft is a good example. Somebody's going to get drafted, but that doesn't mean that was a class with a lot of, you know, top level 5-star prospects. And so that's one thing that I look at. And then the other is the depth, because you might have good top talent. Sometimes you have a class that has a good first round and then the rest of it is really weak. And so, and then opposite, as I said, if you have top talent, maybe there's only like 4 or 5 people that you think are top 20 picks. And then the rest of the draft will last you to about the 5th round where you could get quality people. But that first round is not the type of players that you would say are first round players. That could happen too. So I look at the depth of the draft and I look at the top talent, which is a culmination of each position. And so for this draft, what I could tell you is this is, as I mentioned, kind of a depth draft more than a top talent draft. A lot more of a depth draft. There's a number of positions with good depth. And so you're going to see teams, I wouldn't say not making moves, but you're going to see teams being able to get some of their guys in later rounds because, number one, there's a lot of people to pick from, but number two, their talent separation isn't that much. And that's why you don't have a really high top, talent for this draft because you don't have too many players where it's like, whoa, that player is 3 steps ahead of the other one. A lot of these players are, kind of pick your flavor depending on the position. And other ones are just kind of, okay, you got to pick which trait you like more. You know what I mean? You might have a guy that's really good at 1, 2, 3 and not good at 4, 5, 6. And another guy that isn't good at 1, 2, 3, but is really good at 4, 5, 6. So you just got to figure out which one is important to you. And that's what you're going to see with this draft. So this is one where I would say I wouldn't cry over the first round. Again, each position and each player, that's a little different conversation. But overall, I wouldn't be too upset because what you'll be able to get in rounds 2 and 3, I think, are going to be pretty significant to how you build this thing. And so that's kind of what this draft is. So I think I think that's the overall characteristics, I would say. What you got to understand is, the Senior Bowl is a good example. I just watched that yesterday. And so the Senior Bowl, typically you have a good chunk, obviously, of seniors that are going into the draft that are, the top 100 prospects. But I would say this year, I've never seen, especially with quarterback, I've never seen so many top 100 prospects in the Senior Bowl. Not in the last 5 years, at least. You got what people are considering the 2 top quarterbacks. They were both in the Senior Bowl. Usually, even if you were the top quarterback as a senior, you're not gonna go. But that is indicative of this draft where A, people are trying to separate themselves, but B, there aren't any high octane, or I wouldn't say any, but there's not a lot of high octane juniors and underclassmen that are coming out this year, which is typically what you see. The first round is going to be made up of probably about 10 or so really high octane juniors or underclassmen. And then you're going to have the seniors that kind of have been big time. And then you'll start filling it out as you go throughout the draft. This year, you don't really have that. We'll get to the positions, but one of the main one, well, really two, is between Stingley and Jameson Williams. They coming off injuries. And so, but even, healthy, I still, healthy, I think Stingley probably would be no doubt high octane pick, but Jameson Williams is a 1-year guy. So again, this is just not a year with that type of talent. So anyway, we spent a lot of time talking about that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the prospects. We are going to start with the quarterback class. Now, this is just a function of using the 5-point scale. So the letter grades don't always equivalate. Maybe I should do a 10-point scale. But either way, for quarterbacks, top talent, I got 2.5 out of 5. And for depth, I got 3.5. And so I'm giving this class a D. Now, we'll talk about running backs next, and they have a similar issue where it's part of the position. Part of the quarterback position, you're not going to have a ton of depth. When I think about depth, and you adjust it for a quarterback, but still, I think about how far through the draft can you go and get a quality prospect. And for quarterbacks, that's just always going to be kind of short. And although I think the top quote unquote quarterbacks will probably stretch into the second round, but still, it's not great top talent. So there's that. So as I said, I don't think any of these people are really top tier talent. I don't think anybody did. They call this a really rough quarterback class, and it is for a reason. I mean, you have people with question marks, and that's typically what is going to change a top tier prospect into either a middle of the road prospect or a toss up or a low prospect. And this draft is full of them. It's full of question marks. So you go down the line and there's question marks. And since there's not a whole lot of people, I'll talk about it, each one. Malik Willis, obviously you got the competition thing. He played at a smaller school. But then you have the spread thing, which was every quarterback not too long ago, but in the last 2 years or so, that's been turning around. But he's got a straight spread offense. And so what's the ability to translate to the pros? And then, so you talk about reading defenses, process, and all that good stuff. And so those two things are the real questions you have. And, he's athletic, but I don't know. Some people feel like if any type of quarterback is a runner, there's a question about them getting hit. I don't know if I feel that, but I'm sure some teams might feel that. I think it's balanced enough. Like, it's not a Tim Tebow situation where that's all he knows how to do. So, but obviously he has the big arm and he's got athleticism to extend the play. And that's the only two things people care about right now. They're going to take a chance on him. Kenny Pickett didn't have, I would say, I don't really care too much about college stats, but didn't have like the years of high level production and achievement that some people covet at the quarterback spot. Arm is not a 5, and that's the highest for me. So, I mean, not everybody's going to be a 5, but the question for Kenny is like, is he a 4? Is he a 3.5? That's a huge difference. But when you're talking about arm strength, that affects where you can play, what type of weather, all that good stuff. And so there's questions about that. The hand size, some people freak out about that. And so those are the questions that he'll be looking at. And again, none of these people are like physically, imposing freaks. And the closest you could probably get to is Ritter, but you don't have that, and then it goes to, okay, you don't have the physical talent. Well, what's like the play talent? And Kenny Pickett for a long time was the top prospect because he had the best blend of both, excuse me. Desmond Ritter, same thing with the spread. Not so much with the running, but kind of the same thing with Malik Willis. And so the big in the production thing as well, like Pickett. So the question is, how can you translate not only your processing but your accuracy? And that's the same thing with Willis too, and really all these guys. None of these guys have pinpoint accuracy, but how can you translate your processing to the league, and how can you improve your accuracy, or can you? Matt Corral, size, spread stuff, production. Those are the main things. And then Sam Howell, he, again, I think it's spread, but it's more so like his type of run oriented style, but, also, and I think he has good size, but some people wonder, cause he takes the most hits, can he, endure playing that type of style? So those are the questions. And then Carson Strong lacks all the physical tools, has a lot of the intangibles. So those are the main QBs. Out of this group, I would say the best overall prospect, again, for me is going to be Kenny Pickett. I'll sign off with everybody on that. But again, the margin is slim between him and almost everybody else, especially Malik Willis. And then the one that I would say is kind of a sleeper is Sam Howell. I know a lot of people have Corral over him. I don't have that. I like Sam Howell. Really having I don't know, he has a backyard mentality. I wouldn't say it's Big Ben because he's definitely more athletic, but I don't know. I feel like he kind of has that. And I think his arm is good enough, but that's the thing. If Sam had a 5 arm, this would be a different conversation. So, and then the one I would say to be not skeptical, but to be cautious with is Corral. I don't like anything about his game. And from the evaluations I've seen, I don't agree with any of them. I don't see what they see. And the biggest issue for me is the spread stuff, which we know they can kind of convert, but I mean, it was heavy at Ole Miss. He didn't do a lot of thinking there. And so, I don't know. I'll be curious to see what happens with him. So that's QBs. Obviously, if this was a QB year, you would already know about it. So we're going to go to running backs. Top talent, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Depth, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. And so that's a C for the running back class. Now, the thing with the running backs is the depth at this point is always going to be high. There was a point, again, where there was a prototype. Now there's not. There's really not. There's a lot of people that can get it done in different ways. Obviously, some people are a little more lead back than others, but it doesn't matter. Running back is the ultimate dime a dozen thing. I mean, I've been saying that forever. If you got a good running or a good offensive line, you'll be able to do something with the running back. So that's that. I think the depth for the running back position is pretty much always going to be high unless you get a year where just everybody is terrible athletes. Because while you could be effective as a running back as a bad athlete, you ain't ever going to be a top back. And so there's that. So with this group, I mean, again, the best is really tough to say. This group is very close together in terms of the top guys, quote unquote. And then on top of that, you got different flavors of running backs once you get out of the top group. But for me, I'm going to go Kenneth Walker. I think he started out as the consensus number 1, and I'm going to stick with that. I think it's also good for a running back when you don't have a crazy, history of a workload. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's really early in his career. We'll see what he does, but that's a guy that had an insane workload in college, and we got to see what that does to him in the pros. So I don't mind a guy that, unlike a quarterback or whatever, I don't mind a guy that might have had 1 year of success or just didn't have like a crazy workload. And so Kenneth Walker, he played, but Michigan State, his 1 year there, that's where it was really like put on display. And I just think he has, with him running really well, I think he has the best blend of speed, power, and vision. I know people like Breece Hall a lot, but Kenneth Walker is probably the one that I would look at. And then the one that I think is a sleeper is Karen Williams. And I think that's going to become even more after the combine, which some people put way too much weight into. Now, he was never going to be a first-round pick. It's definitely a guy that's going to be third round or so because of his size. But, I mean, if that's not Austin Eckler, I don't know what is. Now, the thing about Austin Eckler is that you got to be at that time and place with the Chargers where whoever decided to, start utilizing him like that, you got to be there to become what he became. Otherwise, he would have got lost in the shuffle. And so Kieran Williams is just going to have to go to a team that believes in him and is willing to use him in that way. Otherwise, yeah, he could fall off. But I think, man, on tape, he's probably the most impressive back that I saw overall. As far as being who you should be weary of or whatnot, I mean, it depends on how deep you want to go. I'm thinking, you got the top guys. if you were to go deep, I would say Hassan Haskins out of Michigan. Although I do like his lower body power, which he kind of showed off in his testing, but you could tell that he just has really good lower body power, which gives him explosion. So I do like that. But I mean, yeah, I think he really fell off the radar because people don't know that he could do it every down. But if you're talking about the top tier, Isaiah Spiller is the one I'd be a little wary of. And it's not that I dislike his game or anything. Again, with running back, it's going to be purely on situation. And I don't know. There's some things that he brings, but there's also some things that I think might be limiting in the NFL. So there is that. So then we're going to move over to the receivers. And this is similar to the running back position. It's kind of by default got good depth. So top talent, I'm going 3.5. Depth, I'm going 4.5. This group is a B. B as in boy. So I think this is a solid group. As I said, a really deep group. And I do think receiver, not as much as running back, but receivers will kind of automatically be deep just because you could do it in so many different ways. And especially nowadays where being the top receiver is not exclusive to just at one point it was the 6'1" West Coast like prototypical receiver. And then we kind of felt, oh, now it's the freaks, the guys that are 6'3" plus, that can run fast and jump. And then, now we're at a place where it could be anybody. It could be Tyreek Hill at, under 6 foot and going crazy with insane speed. Or Tyler Lockett or Scary Terry that's a route technician and can really eat you up. It could be a freak like a DK or a Mike Evans or, somebody like that. It could be a D-Hop. It could be a number of people. And so with receivers, you can't really limit the top tier based off that. Now, the thing with this class is you don't have, I don't think, any elite athletes. The one that might be an elite athlete is Jameson Williams, and he's coming off an injury. And so we don't know if he's going to be the same. And we don't really know where he would test that. And so that's the one issue. And he also had 1 year. So that's a big question. Drake London, freakish size. But I don't think when you look at the production versus other teams, or not other teams, but other players, and you look at just what the plays he made, he's more of a projection than he is a guy that's a ready product. And then the rest of the guys, I mean, whenever you got this, again, Scary Terry is who I think of, or Tyler Lockett, but when you got the smaller, quicker route runners, there's always question about their size, winning one-on-one matchups. They might not be the go-to guy in the sense that I could just throw it up for a 50-50 ball. Treylon Burks, actually I'll talk about him in a little bit. And then the people after that, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's people with physical tools that might not have production or production or technique. And then there's some people with really good technique that aren't super, athletic. And so that's kind of how it always goes. But we'll see. The consensus is switching all the time about first round receivers. Because my thing is, if they really get into the corners in the O-line, then we could see these receivers stretch out through the third round. I'm talking about quality prospects in the third round. It's possible, but it depends on how that first round goes and where these receivers get pushed down. I mean, because right now people are talking about Jameson Williams at the back of the draft, and yeah, he came off of ACL, but man, if he gets fully back, that caliber of receiver, even though he's young and learning, that caliber of receiver at the back of the first round, that's just crazy depth. And so there is that. As far as who I would say is the top, is really tough. is really tough. I would probably edge it out to Garrett Wilson, because he, at least in the 40, he didn't show next world speed, but he's really fast. But he has next world movement skills that really, I mean, a handful of people in the league have. And the one I think of is Tyreek Hill. I mean, his start, stop, his agility is crazy. And as far as a route runner, as far as his ball skills, as far as, you know, again, his speed downfield, it's all, you know, great to excellent. And so while he might not be elite and some of that, he's an elite mover, and you could do a lot with that. And so I kind of got to lean towards him. As far as like someone to look out for, I mean, honestly, it's two people. Treylon Burks was very much in the limelight, and now he kind of fell off with other people doing things, and then his testing. Excuse me. But I can't see a world where you watch that tape and you're not going crazy. Some of the best size outside of Drake London, and still some of the best like athletic plays where you're talking about coming out of the backfield as a running back like Debo does, or swinging the ball to him or screen, or you're talking about like literally mossing people in the end zone. I mean, at that size to be, I mean, I don't think he's the fastest or the quickest, but to be as quick and fast as he is and have that explosion is crazy. It's crazy to me. I don't think there's a question. But that might be a little obvious one. So I'm going to go with Mechie out of Alabama because his name fell off and he's too coming off an injury. But I honestly, and I don't like saying, it's not like that anybody's listening or that we draft, so it don't matter. But I almost don't want to say this, but I think Mechie's the best receiver in this group. Obviously, when you're talking about the draft game, again, his injury is going to play a factor. And some people don't think he runs like a 4.3, which watching tape, he probably doesn't. But man, when you're talking about a high floor, you're talking about a guy that understands the position, which usually you get out of Alabama. Jamison Williams is a little bit anomaly. But man, Mechie is a dependable. He's a gamer. And he really understands the position. So Mechie, I think, is a big sleeper. All right, so that's the receiving group. Again, a B, really good depth. Tight end group. It's been rough for a lot of times. Now, here's the reason I think this might kind of be locked in. So top talent, I gave it a 1. Depth, I gave it a 3.5. So it has an F for the group. And typically when I look back, tight ends don't have a good position group grade. Although I might say this depth is more of a 4, but it will still be an F. But anyway, the issue is that tight ends aren't usually good until they get to the league. And I was thinking about this as I was going over the what do you call it? I was going over the prospects. Or not the prospects, but just kind of the past. The best tight end, not the best, but the hype tight ends usually don't do well when you think about it. Like Vernon Davis did solid. And then he just never peaked like you wanted to. K2, I think, was another highly touted tight end. He didn't do well. I was thinking of some other names too in like the last 10 years. But usually, like those hype tight ends, they don't usually do the best. And tight ends not usually, but in recent times, the best tight ends have come later. And those tight ends were not that in college. Otherwise, they would have been drafted higher. So my thing with tight ends, if I had to put it on a scale, running backs are a dime a dozen on one end. The next step is receivers, which you can win in a lot of different ways. A little bit dime a dozen, but the elite guys are valuable. Then next would be tight end, because they're a little bit of dime a dozen in the fact that you can go into the 5th round and get a star like George Kittle or whoever. You could do that because who they are in college is vastly different than who they can be in the league. The problem, though, is it takes an incredible transformation to become that for anybody, 1st round or 5th round or 6th or 7th. And so you got to hope that because first of all, they're going to have the physical mismatch. That's why you draft them. But you got to hope they get their body in a way that, makes sense. You got to hope that their athleticism stays the same or goes up, depending on who they are. And then you got to hope that they learn how to play the position, mostly how to block. A lot of these guys don't come in knowing how to block. And so tight ends, you definitely can find value throughout, but it really depends on what you want to put into it. So, yeah. So with these tight ends, there are a lot. And, it's tough to say just because there's a lot of names, they got great depth. Again, it's about quality players. And how quality are these guys? That becomes the question. Actually, you know what? Who I'm going to say, first I should say the best, which is tough. But to me, the best is Cade Otton. I know he's not getting a lot of love in this offseason. But off tape, that was the one that I thought was the most complete. Trey McBride looked better to me on the 2nd round of evaluations. And I get what people are looking at, but I think Cade is just a little bit better overall product, especially when it comes to getting open. The one that I would say is somebody you should watch for is Deese. And I don't even see him on this list I'm looking at, but I don't know if they marked him as a receiver, but Deese, he's out of a small school. Let me see if I could pull this up. I know I can, but I like Deese. One of my friends who also does this, he put me on to that, and he was telling me how much he liked them. And he impressed them. So from San Jose State. Okay, so like I said, a little smaller school. But Deese out of San Jose State, I really like him. I don't think he has the crazy, physical mismatch that everybody has. And I also understand that he might never be a blocker. But really, I think he understands the NFL pass game. And I really think he's going to excel. So I really like these. The one to be wary of, there's so many. It's hard to say. I don't know if I have one that I'm wary of because, again, I think all of these guys could become something. I guess I would say Grant, I don't know how to pronounce this, Grant Calcaterra out of SMU. Just because he has a history of concussions, and apparently he left the NFL, or not the NFL, but the game of football at one point, and was going to become a firefighter, but then came back, and I believe that's him. I hope I'm not forgetting which player that is. But that's injury red flags are always tough, especially if someone said you should lead a game, that's tough too. But tight ends, this group is really lumped together. Just pointing out those three, I don't think does it justice. I really like Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State. I do think he could be big time. I think Ferguson's okay. Dolchich, I think, can be solid. Wiedermeyer could be really good. Oh, Eric Ebron. That's who I was thinking of. Another tight end that didn't really pan out to be what you thought. And O.J. Howard. But anyway, because Wiedermeyer reminds me of that. He's more of an athletic basketball type. And he gets after it in blocking, but he's not great at it. And so the way they used him, if they use him like that in the league, he'll be like a big slot receiver. And it always sounds good, but it just has not worked out in the league. I think you got to understand, how to block to the point where they believe it. And then that way you got to know how to fake off those blocks. You got to know how to delay release. You got to know how to release off the line against the jam. You just got to learn a number of different things. And so, again, it always sounds good, but it don't always work out. But, man, honestly, I tell you, if you look at a group of 6 or 7 tight ends, I would really say they're really close to each other. But, again, none of them are like blow your socks off prospects. All right, so we're going to move to the offensive line, and I'm putting them all together. The interior and the tackles. For top talent, I gave it a 4. And for depth, I gave it a 5. Like, there's no question. I think most people that are into this evaluation life will agree. The depth is crazy this year. And so, I think even if you looked at the tackles solo, it might be a 5. So with the offensive line, what you're looking at, you got, I don't know, offensive line is always kind of a little bit of a project. I would say it's more of a project in the last 7 years or so. Back in the day, you did have guys that were plug and play. And now I don't know if any tackle is plug and play. There's plenty of guards that you could pop in, some centers, but for the most part, tackle is going to be an adjustment because of the spread offense, which I talk about a lot. And so there's going to be some type of learning curve unless you went to a specific school, and there's a couple of them where they ran more of a pro style, and a lot of those are in the Big Ten, which is why people like getting linemen out of there. So you do have that going on with some of these guys. And we do have a couple small schoolers, but for the most part, I think it's a question of the guys with the combination of elite size, strength, and speed, like a Evan Neal. Those are guys that don't have the technique to back it up. And same thing with Charles Cross. And so Bernhard Raymond, who is really young in football. You got guys like that. And then you got guys that have a little more nastiness, a little more of the, technicians that aren't as strong. You got maulers that are naturally strong that aren't really good at technique. And so, again, as you see the pattern, that's what happens. Top tier guys have the whole package. Other people don't. And so you got a bit of a pick your flavor going on with the tackles this year. But when you're talking about movement skills, when you're talking about physical tools, you got a number of guys, more so than usual, that can really become something if you coach them right. And so that's going to become the question. Can you coach them right? So the best out of the group, honestly, I'm going to say Evan Neal. I know his stock is not what it was and it's been going down. And I didn't start off as the best, or I didn't say the best. I didn't start off as the biggest fan of him either. But the thing is, you can't teach some of the stuff that he has. Now, I think his motor isn't great, and you're going to have to get him motivated. And I think his technique is definitely something to be cleaned up. But Alabama, it ain't a spread necessarily to the point where he doesn't understand how to pass pro. He knows how to do that. They had enough pro ideas in coaching to where he knows some of that stuff. So that's a plus. And then again, his pure size, strength, and movement at that size is just really rare. So I just have to say that's the best prospect. Although you got Ikem, who a lot of people are now saying is the best prospect. I think I don't know if he could be left tackle, but, they do some crazy things in the league. In a traditional offense, I don't think he could be a left tackle. I do think he has 4 position versatility, and that helps, but you can't teach what Evan Neal has. Somebody to look out for that I think is a bit of a sleeper. You got a couple candidates. Number 1, you got Daniel Falale, who a lot of people were on and now they're off. Look, look. You talk about stuff you can't teach. Evan Neal's a big boy. Falale is a bigger boy, and he isn't, a freak athlete in terms of running fast and all that. But for his size and what he can do is impressive. The thing that I'm saying with Falale is, if I take him, is I'm looking at him 30 pounds lighter. That's my goal. That's a non-negotiable, which you have with offensive linemen sometimes. So I'm like, look, if he could do this and we could get him 25 to 30 pounds down, man, imagine what we would have on our hands. And again, I don't like putting that out there because he's falling off people's radar, and hopefully that means he'll fall to my team. But overall, I mean, that dude is a straight up beast. Yeah, so that's why I was saying the tackle spot. On the interior line spot, I just blanked on his name. I just saw it earlier. Let me find him real quick. I got two actually I really like. So Jamari Salyer, I don't know how to say that, from Georgia. Love him. He played left tackle at Georgia, and so he probably won't be a tackle, although I thought he played really well. But I really think at guard he's going to excel. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, even if some people say he's not a tackle, balance, and blah, 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 he was one of the best movers at the tackle spot, hands down. So you take that ability and put him in a guard spot where he doesn't have to be in a lot of space. There's not much he won't be able to get to as a guard in terms of pulling, going second level, pass protection, help blocking, moving from a target to a target on the blitz. He's got that. Now, the rest of it, again, if he has a balance or core issue, which a lot of times don't get fixed, that's something the team has to look into. But size-wise, strength-wise, moving-wise, I thought Jamari jumped off the tape. And as a guard, I think he's going to be excellent. The other person I would say is Donovan West out of Arizona State. He plays center. And I have to, now that I'm done with the main evaluation, I'm going to do a little bit digging. I got to dig in on him because I don't understand why he's not talked about as a first-round pick. I mean, all I'll say is you have guys that are able to hold their own at the center position as far as, at the point being stout. But, man, you don't have guys like this. And maybe I need to watch more tape, but it's hard to move him. And he can get out in the screen game and stuff. So you usually don't get that combo. You get a guy like Linderbaum who can move all over the place, but you got to worry about him getting blown up if he can handle the NFL strength. But, man, I think West has a great combination of both. So there's that. But, the interior, you're going to be good. Zion Johnson, he might be a guard, he might be a center, he might be a tackle. Depends on who wants him. Tyler Smith might be a guard, might be a tackle. Keon Green is more than likely a guard. Tyler Lindenbaum's a center. So you got at least 4 to 5 guys up top that are going to be good. And that's in addition to all the tackles. So the O-line is really stacked this year. If you are looking to get in the O-line game this year, you won't be disappointed. So I believe, I said that's an A group. 4 top talent, 5 depth. D-line. So we are putting the edge rushers, the interior guys together. 3.5 top talent, 4.5 depth, a B group. Now, some people are going to be like, a B, I heard the D-line is great this year. And the D-line is really good. Great isn't there. So, and I get it that pass rushers, much like quarterbacks, it's like, I don't care who it is. Like, they look good. Like, they're great. Like, they get pushed up. That's not exactly how it works. So, again, I think if you look at Aiden Hutchinson and those guys at the top and you're like, wow, great prospects. Think about Chase Young. That's what you got to think about. Think about Myles Garrett. think about stuff like those prospects. There's no doubt that's top talent. You don't have that. Again, you have a lot of question marks like you do with this whole draft. And so it's not that they don't have great potential, but it's question marks. So number one, well, I'm not gonna go through everybody, but there's question marks. But I go through a few. Aiden Hutchinson, he doesn't have the history of production, and he doesn't have the athleticism that is off the charts. Athletic for his size, yes. Good athlete, yes. Not off the charts. Kayvon, personality, effort, and I don't think he bends the best. I don't think he's a crazy athlete. And so there's that. In between Hutchinson and Thibodeau, there nobody in this draft. I would say nobody on the edge has like perfected hand technique. Maybe a couple, not perfected, but high level. Most of these guys don't. So that's the question you got. Trayvon Walker, pure potential. He didn't even really play edge rusher. And so you talking about height, weight, speed to the maximum. Same thing with David Ojobo, or not same thing. He played on the edge, but he's rough around the edges. Lot to fix, or not fix, but a lot to grow. Boy Mafe, who's rising late, same thing. Lot of build and potential, but you got to get it out of them. Potential isn't guaranteed. So those are some of the things we are looking at. All right, so the best of the group is Aiden Hutchinson, 100%. I think just the demeanor, the combination of athleticism, technique, and strength is all there. I think the question with Thibodeau and Hutchinson, who are clearly the top two, or at least I would say the top most ready prospects, the question with them is how prolific can they be? Because there's many people that don't believe that they can be a prolific 20-sack guy. Now, they could be a good 12-sack guy. They could be a real good run stopper guy. But they don't think they'll be a prolific off-the-edge pressure person all the time. The thing with Hutchinson that I'll say, and you need this first and foremost, so it's not bad, but he is mostly effort. His wins are mostly effort. Motor, I should say. You need the motor. I did the AP All-Pro tape. If you want to watch that on my channel, I went over in the NFL one year. I looked at all the All-Pros, and every D lineman, every sack person, same thing. They got a motor. Cover sacks, clean up sacks. It's just that goes into the number. The sacks you get off pure wins are not a lot unless you are a serious top guy. You don't get a lot of those. Most of it is off effort. And so some people think in the league, especially early on, Hutchinson and Thibodeau won't be prolific sack artists. And so that lowers your premium. Again, in this class, yes, top 2, 3, 5 picks, whatever. If Chase Young was in this class, ain't no discussion. So there's that. And Chase is not a once-in-a-lifetime guy. He is a dude, but he's not a once-in-a-lifetime guy. So anyway, top Hutchinson. Sleepers. Let me see. I definitely got one. Do I got another one? No, not really. The biggest sleeper I'll say is Drake Jackson out of USC. I love him. Prototypical build. Like everybody else, this is one of the guys that I say has the hands that is up there, understands all that stuff, and high effort, high effort. I wouldn't mind him on my team, but I see him as a Patriot so bad. But I really think Drake Jackson out of USC might be a surprise in the draft as far as where he goes, or he just might be a surprise when he gets on the field. And then I'll also throw in Michael Clemens out of Texas A&M. I think he has potential. I wouldn't say he's going to burst on the scene necessarily, but I do think he has potential. The one to be wary of, I don't even think he's an edge guy, George Karlaftis. I don't see it. Again, I don't think he's an edge guy. I think if you tried to play him as a DN, his his career could fall off real fast. I think he's a 3-4 end. There's a couple of these guys. We just don't have base defense like we used to. Base defense used to be on the field majority of the time. Now it's not even close. It's maybe 20-30% of the time. The vast majority of the time a team is on the field is some type of nickel or sub package. And so you got guys that are traditional 3-4 DNs, J.J. Watt types, Calais Campbell types, and there's no real spot for them anymore. And that's what I think he is. I don't think he's a guy that's winning on. First of all, he didn't win on the edge in college. I don't see him winning on the edge in the NFL. I mean, he could, reshape himself, but I don't see it. All he is run straight ahead. He's strong, and that's cool, but that's not a guy I'm excited about. Another guy is J. Sanders, and I don't know. I think this is a case of a guy that looks the part, but might not play the part. And I really think. Well, first I'll say somebody did tell me like he was sick or something at the combine because he weighed 228 and ran slow as hell. And so being underweight and slow, big red flags. But even on the field, I just didn't see the urgency. I didn't see a pass rusher. And so he's a big time project for me that if you get him, I don't know. On the interior, which we do have a lot of players. So I got to give the interior some love. I mean, Jordan Davis is the best, easy. And there's a lot of good players to look after. I mean, there's a lot of big space eaters and everything. I think Winfrey, against my better judgment, we'll see if a team can mold him. But he's got great potential. But Leo out of Texas A&M, I really do think he is Chris Jones reinvented, playing out of position, just like Chris Jones trying to play on the end in the NFL didn't work out. This Leo, he didn't belong on the edge, but I think as a 3 technique, he could make some noise. I think he could really make some noise. So there's that part. No, I don't know if I have any other guys that I think are big sleepers. I like Fedarian Mathis. Actually, he might be falling down people's list. At first, he was like, yeah, he's one of the guys, but he might be falling down the list. I think he's an absolute beast as well. So, and then people to worry about, like I said, Winfrey is kind of a sleeper / he might not do well in the league. Yeah. That's pretty much. I mean, these other guys is kind of whatever. But Ridgeway, I don't know. I've been hearing some things. I'm going to just say watch out if you get him, man. He's got the look, but I don't know. We'll see. And Wyatt. Wyatt's a little bit of a guy that it could work out, it cannot. I don't know. He's very much a tweener, and we got a lot of tweeners this year, and tweeners don't always really work out. I mean, it's a coin toss. All right, so that's the D-line. Very deep group, very, very deep group. A lot of good, I think, I would say a lot of people with potential and a lot of people that are going to be solid starters in their career. Linebacker, top talent, 2.5. Depth, 5. We're giving it a C. That's a C for the group. I mean, and that's exactly the way, as I said it. You got a lot of good prospects. A lot of good prospects. Again, question marks, but a lot of good prospects. Nobody with the type of talent that would make you want, a high round pick. And I don't know that those linebackers are going to ever exist. We had this conversation with running backs, and I think it might be happening with linebackers. And I don't necessarily think they're dime a dozen. Like, I think receivers way more dime a dozen than linebacker. But that being said, you don't have to have a top 10 pick to be a good linebacker. And We're seeing it more and more and more. Now, the issue is, what is the league going to look like? Because we're seeing it with this group of guys, and we're seeing it in college. Offenses, some of them, the smart ones, are trying to move back to a more pro style. The reason they're doing that is because the spread was like, oh, y'all traditional. Y'all can't keep up with this. Y'all can't play sideline to sideline. Defenses have evolved. People that usually play safety were playing linebacker. Linebackers that were stack backers became edge rushers, or, and people just got more athletic. Now we're at a point where they're so athletic, they're killing the screens, they're killing the jet sweeps, they're doing all that. It's so good that it's like the middle of this defense is soft. Maybe we could go there. And so we're seeing that shift. And so will the league get to that at some point? That would be the question. And then we'll see, the difference in between the value of linebackers. But right now, I mean, they play a very important part. The problem is you can have an elite game as a linebacker and not do much in the stats, and people wouldn't care because they don't see those parts. It's the same thing in all positions in football. A lot of what you do can allow other people to do things. You did your job, but people don't see that. They look at the people, oh, you got an interception, a forced fumble, touchdown, like 12 tackles, whatever. And so they are underappreciated. I don't think it's like, linebackers going the third round, but it's less and less the first round. All right, so with this group, and again, you got a lot of people close to each other, and you see a theme here. This is why the draft class is the same. A lot of people close to each other that don't separate, a lot of different flavors. The best linebacker out of this group, I don't even know. Honestly, I think if we're talking about prospects, I might have to say Quay Walker. Quay Walker out of Georgia, obviously not getting as much love as Nakobe Dean. But look, Quay Walker he's not the athlete Dean is, but he's maybe a notch below him. And so that ain't bad for how big he is. He ain't bad. And when you're talking about making plays, I definitely don't think Quay Walker could make the plays and coverage that Dean did. But Quay Walker was making a lot of the plays for Georgia. And they had some weird rotation because they had way too many linebackers. But all of them would get drafted. And so I just think Quay, with his size, with his athleticism, with his instincts, with his, power, I like him the best. I like him the best because I don't think I have to take him off the field on third down. And with Nakobe Dean, you get the plus side of coverage, but at the same time, what do you give up in size? And I think he'll be fine, but some teams will think about that. Devin Lloyd, he's not the athlete a lot of these guys are. And now it might be the case. Somebody pulled up a good example, and I wouldn't say I was down on him, but I didn't think he was the top prospect, was Darius Leonard. Same way. Didn't test well, didn't look well as far as the athlete, but what he's been able to do with the Colts, and I'm not going to sit here and say I watched all his tape. I watched some of his stuff. Part of it, obviously, is the scheme and what, you'll be in position to do and the players helping you. But the other part is he's a dog. He's a gamer. And Devin Lloyd is a gamer. There's some people that think he could move to edge rusher. He has really good blitzing skill set, which helps because these days, especially these days, at one point, I would say like not even 3 years ago, third down, you couldn't cover you off the field. Nowadays, they're realizing, let's get some more out of this guy. Instead of taking him off the field, let's blitz. And so whether that's a straight up blitz or, a 6-man pressure, 7-man pressure, let's blitz. And so if you get to the point where you're like, Devin is a liability in coverage, you could always blitz him. And so he still has value. But again, better athletes make better players. People like better athletes. So that's his knock. But yeah, this is a really good group. So the best, I'd probably say Quay Walker. As far as who to look out for, first you got to look out for Troy Anderson. I don't think it's not like he's my top pick, but you can't not talk about him. This man is big. He played quarterback, running back, linebacker, and he punted at Montana State. So look at his stuff, his highlight. The video quality is not great, but look at his highlights. It's crazy. So to think about all the stuff he did and to be that multiple, I'd be curious to see what he does as a linebacker. DeMarco Jackson, hearing good things, App State linebacker. Look for him. But I would say, who would I say is a real sleeper? Jimmel out of North Carolina. I was thinking because I was like, it was a second wave of linebackers, and I really liked a lot of them. Jimmel out of North Carolina, I think, might be able to party. I think he really might be able to party. That's a gamer through and through. And then the one to be wary of is Beavers. I mean, he's dropped so far, but if you still thinking he might be good, or if your team gets him, be wary. He might could lose weight and transform, but I don't know, man. He's a suspect athlete. It don't look good. And Brandon Smith as well. Brandon Smith, really not suspect athlete. He's good, but he looks like he does not want to play football. That's all I can say when I watch his tape. All right. Going to the corners. Wrapping this up. Linebackers was a B, or C group. 5 depth though. Corners, 4.5 top talent, 4 depth, B plus group. Yeah, this is a special group, man. Corners is rare. That when you talk about scarce prospects, corners is one of them. But I would venture to say, you have 4, maybe 5. No, I would say you definitely have 5 guys in the top 50. More than likely 6 of them in the top 50. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so this is really good talent. It's a rare group. You don't usually have long corners that are also really fast. You don't usually have fast. I should say this: long corners usually aren't fast, and fast long corners usually aren't super athletic as far as movement side to side. These guys are. Between Booth and Sauce and Kyer, really long, really fast, but also really fluid with their hips. They can, shift the weight. They can do those things. And then Stingley coming off injury, but you're talking about crazy man coverage, crazy ball skills. Then you got McDuffie, too, who I don't know. I said if you watch my corner video, I don't know because the tape is hard to get anything off of it. But the insiders say they love the way he moves. I know for a fact he games. He does not, shy away from getting his nose dirty. And then McQuarrie, who I don't think is necessarily the straight line burner, but he's a really good fluid athlete, and his man coverage is crazy, and he's tough. And the cherry on top to all of this is, man, they play the run. With the exception of Elam. I don't know what I said earlier, but Kyer Elam. With the exception of him, these people are not afraid to hit. They play the run. And so that's rare. All this is rare. So the top talent is crazy. Now, the thing is, they could, I would say they all could go in the first round. They all could go. Now, so technically the depth isn't what you would usually say, but that's part of the rest of the class. I think if you had a couple premium pass rushers, if you had premium receivers, and obviously if you had a couple quarterbacks or even one quarterback, I think you'll see these guys push more into the second round. But as it stands now, you could see all 6 of these guys go in the first round. More than likely, these really top guys, which I would say is Stingley, Booth, Sauce, McDuffie, Elam, and McQuarrie, I really think that they'll be gone by the middle of the second. Now, I'm going to jump ahead to the one to look out for, Tyreek Woolen. I mean, if you watch the combine, he blew the crap up. You're talking 6'4", running a 4.2. And the tape isn't horrible at all, but I would say it's average. But you're talking about a guy that played at San Antonio, Texas, smaller school. Wasn't, he just don't have a lot of miles on him like that. And so when you're talking about a piece of clay to mold, that's it. And usually you get that in the first round. I think this year, Elam is a little bit of a clay you got to mold. The rest of them, these are corners. These are guys that know how to cover already. But Woolen, you might want to watch out for. The best of the group is Sauce. And then the one to be wary of, again, it's tough for me to say McDuffie, but I got to say McDuffie. I didn't get to see what everybody else saw. I watched the tapes, but they play, and I'm not going to get too technical, but they play bail coverage every play. And it's just hard to really see what a player can do because bail coverage is going to be rare in the league. And so it's hard to understand, is he a zone guy? Is he a man guy? My thoughts is that he's a zone guy. And so, but I didn't get to see him really break on the ball traditionally and all that. So I don't know, but he is a bit of a gamer, but we'll see. We'll see. But I really like the corner group. Like I said, B+. The safety group, last group, and I thought this was going to be quick, but hey, it's quicker than trust me, I could go for hours on this. This group is, not as exciting. So top talent's a 3, depth is a 3, that's a D. So safeties is kind of like tight ends. Usually you don't have great prospects. Now, Kyle Hamilton, and there's not a lot of safety, so I could talk some time. Kyle Hamilton is one of the issues. I know that everybody's saying top 5 and all that, and I get it. But he's not a slam dunk to me. I honestly feel like he is more of a boom or bust. Because, yes, he has, crazy size and movement, but he's not a great athlete for safety. So his testing kind of showed that, but as what I already saw on tape is, again, not bad, but he's not a great athlete for safety. And so you're talking about limited fluidity with the hips, limited top speed. I think he can carve out a great cover 2 role. He could carve out a great cover 3 safety in the box or even a slot. Like, honestly, you might get value by just making him a big nickel. The questions come just like Isaiah Simmons, and Isaiah Simmons was a way better athlete. Where do you play him? Where do you get the most value? And, I don't think I ever saw him blitz, so I don't think he's that type. But, again, my biggest thing with him as far as a plus was the man coverage. Tight ends, long arm guys with radius, all that, running backs especially. He could stay with them. But I don't, obviously he can't play middle of the field free. He can't get from middle of the field to the sideline. Absolutely not. And I think he'll be, good at getting in the cover 2 from the hash to the sideline. But I don't know how great he'll be beyond that. And so I look for him to make plays in the box. Look for him to add as a man coverage guy, but I don't see elite. And so, me personally, even though it's a function of the rest of the draft and who's available, just off in the vacuum, I'm not taking Kyle as a top 5 pick. And so that knocks down the rest because the rest of the class ain't great and ain't even deep. And so, I mean, it's deep in the sense you got guys. And again, safety is one of those positions where they kind of evolve in the league. I mean, but you do got good safeties that stay good safeties, especially free safeties. You can't make that up. Daxton Hill out of Michigan, he's a nickel. I don't see any team talking about him as a safety, so it's hard to count him. Brisker has the body of a free safety and the heart and game of a linebacker. So we'll see kind of what we haven't seen a lot of his coverage. And so I'm interested in what a team is going to do with him. Sin out of Georgia, I think will be just fine. I think he's probably going to be the most ready to step in and do something. He tested a lot better than I expected, but I thought he was still a solid athlete. It's just, I don't know if we got playmakers. We got a lot of box safeties, a lot of hitters, which is good, but I don't know what playmakers we have. I didn't even see one free safety that can go from middle of the field to the sideline. And then, yeah, that's kind of where it stops is those 4 guys. And then the rest, I mean, shoot. Some people talk about Petrie from Baylor, McKinley from Oregon, Joseph from Illinois. They are so middle of the road to me. I can't. So the safety group, as I said, is a D. Not a lot of top talent. I mean, you got guys that are clearly the top guys, but it's 3 of them. And then Kyle's going to go top 5. So he's gone. So it's not a whole lot to grab from as far as the top guys, and those top guys still kind of have questions. And then the rest of it is just pure depth where it's just middle of the road. So that is the draft class. I'm not doing specialists. So, that's a lot, but that's the group. That's kind of where I have the positions laid out. So hopefully you get an idea of what to expect for the positions your team are looking for. And hopefully I gave you a couple names to go out and look at. So that's it for me. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.